Good afternoon, everybody. Another beautiful day here in the shop. What we're going to do today is we're going to start drilling and tapping our steel for our PrintNC. Now, if you're building this, make sure and go to Mark's website at 3design.store and download the STL files to print out some of these little guides for drilling all your holes. That will come in real handy. So this is a 3/16 inch steel. My machine is footprint of 65 inches by 65 inches. I'm going to do all 4 of my Y cross braces, and we're going to get ready to go. So I'm going to have the help today of a special helper, and that's one of the Flappettes here. Tell them what we're going to do.
We are going to do a CNC machine.
Okay. What I've got here, this is going to be the frame for my PrintNC CNC machine. Now this is 3x2 by 3/16 hot rolled steel. This is just your standard stuff you get from the steel yard. I went ahead and sanded it all down, got all the rust and most of the mill scale off. I went ahead and shot that with some Rust-Oleum clean metal primer. That's the white you see, just to make it a little easier to deal with, because if you don't do that, then it's kind of nasty, grimy, rusty, yuck. So I did shoot it. It's already starting to rust a little bit through the primer. You can see that, but I'm going to paint all this whenever I'm done. This was more just for the construction phase. So I did cheat whenever I bought this steel, and the steel yard offered to cut it for $1 a cut. I said, well, I can't hardly beat that. That way it fits in the truck. Everything's good. They did promise 1/8 inch accuracy, which I felt was good enough. And all I've done is I've taken my Precision Lowe's $12.99 level. I lined up all these sides as best as I could, and I came over to this side and saw, I think we got our full 1/8 inch of accuracy on that last one, but I'm going to explain why that's not terribly critical. So what I have done is I have picked the 4 pieces that are closest in size, and they're all within a millimeter or 2 of correct size, and I think that will be close enough for our purposes. And I made those the outside of the frame. So we have Y left and Y right, X front and X back, and those will actually make the boundary of our square for our frame. And then I have 2 X supports, or 2 middle supports. The standard PrintNC only has 1, but because I'm going so large, I went ahead and put 2, just because I was buying this steel in 20-foot sections and I had enough. So so that's it. These 2 middle supports, those are the shortest of the 2, but they're also not critical. So I will have to probably play around with where I drill the screws on the X supports to get them to line up just right, but that won't be an issue at all. Those really are just there to support the wasteboard. That's pretty much all they're doing in that. They do add a little bit of strength to the X and the Y, but with this 3/16 inch steel over 5 foot, 5.5 foot, I'd be hard pressed to bend that. As a matter of fact, I have stepped on this, measured it with a dial indicator, and there's very little flex in this, and I'm not a small man. So our next project is going to be to drill these 4 X supports. They'll basically get 4 holes, top and bottom, and then an extra access hole in the front of each piece, or the front and back pieces for cable access. The X supports get drilled on the long side, and then our Y left and Y right will get holes drilled in the bottom on the short side, and then we'll bolt those together. The X supports, those are non-threaded 6.5 millimeter holes. You're going to run some M6 cap head screws through those, and then the Y supports left and right, those will get 6 millimeter threaded. So I'll be actually drilling 5 millimeter holes and then thread those out to 6 millimeter. So for our X supports, Mark did a good job of designing these little drill templates. Couple of options with that. One thing you can use a spring-loaded center punch if that's what you want, but the only problem I found is they're a little bit bigger than the tip of that, and you can get off maybe a 0.5 millimeter. So what I decided to do is get a drill bit. With these being painted, all I really have to do is chip the paint to locate that, so that's what I'm going to do. And you can see I've got my 5 holes located here, and that's going to be for this corner. Now if I wanted to, I can go back here. Now that I've got my holes located, hit it with a center punch just to make that a little better. Same thing with the Y rail. Very similar contraption, and again, I've just got to drill enough to chip the paint. On the X, on the cross X's, you're also going to do 4 holes on the bottom. And that's the same thing. You're going to use your Y support, you're going to put it on the bottom, you're going to mark your 4 holes. In the X supports, those are all through holes, 6.5 millimeter non-threaded. On the Y supports, those are going to be 6 millimeter threaded. So to thread for an M6 bolt, you're going to drill a 5 millimeter hole and then tap it out to 6 millimeters. So I've got my holes marked. I am set up with a support here on the drill press. You don't necessarily need a drill press, but I have one, and it just makes life a whole lot easier. So this is a pretty simple operation. I'm going to drill 4 pilot holes, flip it over, drill 4 more, spin it around, 4 holes, and do the same on both of my my X supports. So I do have just a touch of drilling fluid on each one of these. This should go pretty easy. I have tried to drill straight with the 6.5 millimeter drill bits, but it's pretty hard to locate those without a pilot hole. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a pilot hole. Just takes a couple of seconds. All right, we got the 6.5 millimeter bit in there. We just drilling. These are just straight through holes, nothing tapped on either one of these. You can probably tell I got a lot of chowder and smoke out of these bits, and these bits are probably, the cheapest bits I could find on straight out of China. So that's why I know I'm using them probably a little bit harsh and a little bit fast, and they're chattering and smoking, and I got a whole stack of them over there, and I plan to go through most of them, so it's all right. If you got some high dollar bits that you like, you should probably slow this process down just a touch. All right, and that's all my holes for my cross supports. Like I said earlier, I'm dogging these bits, but it's okay. I got a whole stack of them over there on the workbench, so those are expendables. Okay, so to position and drill for the underside of your X support, or I'm sorry, your Y supports, Mark did make some templates that work with that. I'm not real sure how those work though. He does in his video go over it, but what I'm going to do, because I have two, I know from my measurements that they need to be 16.5 inches in between the end pieces here. So I just cut a piece of old junk 2x4 at 16.5. I actually cut two of them, and I'm gonna go ahead and make sure I've got my corners all bolted up, so I'm gonna make sure that this one is on there. Don't have to be super tight, hand tight. And again, this distance isn't critical. What's critical is that they're both the same distance from the end. And actually, technically, I guess that's not even critical. Because these are just basically to support your Y pieces and your wasteboard. So get them both lined up, both squared up, and I'm going to grab a bigger clamp and clamp that down because of the way that I'm going to mark these pieces is a little different. Clamp it about like so, make sure I'm squared up. And what I'm going to do, instead of making a template or printing a template to get this where it needs to be, I'm just going to use the holes I just drilled because that's as accurate as it's going to get. So let me find my 6.5 millimeter, and we'll get that done. So again, using the steel in place as a marking tool, all I really need to do with my drill is chip the paint on the underside of this Y support. I'm going to do the same thing with both sides, and then I'll do our X middle number 3 for that end. Same thing. I'll take my Y supports over to the drill press, drill them out. Those will be 6mm tapped holes. Alright, so we've got the Y-beams off. I traded out Flappettes because the other one's feet were hurting. So we're going to get these holes drilled. Now, one of the things with doing it the way that I did it is, if these holes are a little bit off, it's okay, because I actually use the part that's going to bolt to this as a template. So the plastic templates that you can print out are very accurate, but I'm not. So this works for me. You do what you need to do to mark your own spots. But anytime I'm bolting two things together, it always works best for me to just use the parts that you're bolting together as a template. So again, I've got a small drill bit here. I'm going to drill pilot holes in both locations. I only have one of the beams over here at the moment. Do yourself a favor, and if you're using a drill press and you've been drilling out the through holes with the 6.5mm drill bit, set that away somewhere and don't try to grab it, because these are going to have to be 5mm holes that we will then tap out to a 6mm threaded connection. So put just a little dollop of tapping oil on there. And here we go. Can you just hold it up? Can you read that right there?
Craft 6mmX100.
Okay. So we're going to use a 6mm by 1 tap. Go ahead and verify that with somebody who's got some good eyeballs. And it was at this time that the rains came and it just started pouring, and you could not hear anything because, of course, I'm in a metal building. So all we did is we put the frame back together and went ahead and ran the M6 by 14 screws in all of the tapped holes that we just finished, and that was about it. And that pretty much completed the XY frame build. All right, so we got everything tapped and drilled and tapped on the X and Y supports. So using the actual Y supports to mark as a template went flawless. I didn't have any problems bolting it back up. One thing I will tell you is this really goes with any time you're working with metal, especially if it's a homebrew job like this. Always loosely start all of your screws before you tighten anything down, because if you go and start torquing that corner, by the time you get over here, you may not even be able to get your bolts threaded in there. So go around and start all of your bolts, 3 or 4 threads. That way you've still got that that built-in slop or adjustment. As Mark says in his videos, if you can't make it perfect, make it adjustable. So I like that concept. So I've got all of the bolts back in. That's 32 bolts. So we 32 6mm holes tapped, 5mm drilled, 6mm tapped. All of those are in. It's bolted together. I didn't square anything up. I haven't torqued them down. They're still a little bit loose, but they're tight enough for what we need to do going forward. So we're probably going to call it a night. I think Mrs. Flapp has got some dinner going, so we're going to go ahead and go grab a bite to eat. But I appreciate you watching. I'll start doing the rails and motor mounts and bearing mounts. If we don't get back out here tonight, we'll probably get to it tomorrow. So thanks for watching.
There you go.